That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The sun hung low over the sprawling expanse of Joint Base Lewis McChord, casting long shadows across the dew-kissed parade grounds. Master Chief Petty Officer Elias Kane adjusted the strap of his tactical vest, the weight of it familiar against his shoulders, as he scanned the formation of trainees. At 38, with 15 years in naval special warfare, Kane had seen the rhythm of dawn drills countless times, the sharp crack of boots on gravel, the low murmur of commands echoing like distant thunder. His canine partner, Rex, a sleek German shepherd with a coat the color of polished walnut, sat rigidly at his heel, ears perked, black eyes fixed on the horizon. Rex's harness gleamed under the first light, the embroidered NAV-spec war patch catching the glint of emerging rays. "Platoon, attention!" The command snapped from Lieutenant Harlan's lips, crisp and unyielding. The trainees straightened, spines like rifle barrels, as the wind whispered through the chain-link fences bordering the base. Kane's unit, a specialized K-9 integration team for SEAL operations, was here for a joint exercise, simulating urban tracking scenarios in the Pacific Northwest's misty terrain. It was procedural, methodical, deploy handlers and dogs to locate mock targets amid simulated chaos, no room for deviation. Kane had drilled this with Rex for months. The dog's nose could sift through layers of scent like a compass through fog, a bond forged in the salt spray of Coronado beaches and the dust of forward deployments. Kane knelt briefly, his gloved hand brushing Rex's flank. The dog's fur was warm, still carrying the faint chill of the night. "Steady, boy," Kane murmured, voice low enough not to carry. Rex's tail gave a single controlled thump against the ground, a silent affirmation. In the world of special operations, loyalty wasn't spoken. It was etched in every synchronized step, every unspoken cue. Kane rose, falling into line beside the other handlers, their dogs forming a disciplined arc, Malinois and shepherds, all bred for precision, not theatrics. The exercise commenced with the bark of a whistle. Trainees scattered into mock urban setups, shipping containers stacked like city blocks, interspersed with chain barriers and faux debris. Harlan paced the perimeter, radio clipped to his shoulder, issuing directives through static-laced bursts. "Kane, take Rex east flank. Simulate hostile evasion. Report contacts." Kane nodded, clipping Rex's lead before releasing it with a soft command. "Such. Seek." The dog moved fluidly, nose low to the earth, weaving through the obstacles with the economy of motion that came from years of shared ops. From night raids in arid valleys to harbor patrols under sodium lights. Halfway through the drill, the air shifted. A distant cry pierced the controlled hum of the base, faint at first, like radio interference, then sharpening into clarity. It came from beyond the eastern fence, where the base edged against a cluster of modest family housing units, quarters for dependents of active duty personnel. Kane paused, Rex halting mid-stride, head tilting toward the sound. The cry escalated, a child's voice raw and piercing. "They took my dog. Please help. He's in the van." The formation faltered. A few trainees glanced sideways, but Harlan's voice cut through. "Eyes front. This is controlled environment. Maintain focus." Yet Kane felt the pull, instinctive, like the tug of a leash in reverse. Rex whined softly, a low vibration in his throat, nostrils flaring as if already passing the air for unfamiliar scents. Beyond the fence, a small figure darted into view, a girl, no older than 8, her ponytail disheveled, uniform skirt from the base school fluttering as she pounded on the chain link. Tears streaked her face, hands clutching the wire. "Mister, they just drove off with Buddy. White van, blue stripe, please." Kane's pulse steadied, years of discipline clamping down. Protocol was clear. Base security handled civilian incidents. Handlers stayed mission-bound, but the girl's eyes locked on his, wide with a desperation that echoed the quiet fears he'd buried from his own deployments, leaving family behind, the what-ifs that lingered in barracks silence. Rex strained forward, paws scraping the gravel, his gaze fixed on the girl as if sensing the fracture in her world. "Chief Kane," Harlan radioed, tone edged with warning. "Disregard, resume track." The lieutenant stood 50 yards off, arms crossed, the morning light hardening the lines of his insignia. Around them, the drill hummed on. Dogs quartering ground, trainees calling mock clearances. But the van's taillights were already a fading memory in the girl's recounting, spotted near the commissary lot, accelerating away as she chased after her pet, a scruffy mutt who'd wandered from their yard. Kane hesitated, hand hovering over Rex's collar. The bond with his dog wasn't just operational, it was a mirror to his own vulnerabilities. The loyalty that outlasted orders, the conscience that whispered in the lulls between missions. "Hold," he told Rex, but the command felt hollow. The girl slumped against the fence, sobs muffled now, her small fists clenched. In the chain of command, defiance started small, a glance, a pause, a choice to listen when the routine demanded silence. As the drill pressed forward, Kane clipped Rex's lead and veered subtly toward the fence line. Harlan's eyes narrowed from afar, but no call came yet. The base's hum enveloped them. Distant rotor wash from a Black Hawk warming up, the metallic tang of dew on razor wire. Kane reached the gate, keying the latch with steady fingers. "What's your name, kid?" he asked, voice even, professional. "Emily," she whispered, wiping her nose on her sleeve. "Buddy's all I have since Dad's overseas. They said he was a stray, but he's mine." Kane nodded, scanning the access road where tire tracks scarred the wet asphalt. Rex nosed the ground there, a soft huff escaping as he catalogued the scents. Rubber, exhaust, and something sharper. Fear, perhaps, or the earthy musk of a frightened animal. The white van was gone, swallowed by the pre-dawn fog rolling in from the sound, but Rex's interest sharpened, body coiling like a spring. "Stand by," Kane said into his radio, ignoring the prickle of Harlan's impending scrutiny. Protocol be damned for a moment. This was the human element beneath the ranks, the moral fault line where duty met the raw edge of compassion. As Emily's story spilled out in fragments, Kane unclipped Rex. "Track," he commanded softly. The dog surged forward, nose to the trail, leading them into the graying light. The base's order receded behind them, the first ripple in a chain that would soon demand reckoning. The fog clung to the access road like a shroud, muting the crunch of Rex's paws on the damp gravel as he quartered the ground with methodical sweeps. Kane followed at a measured pace, his boots leaving even imprints beside Emily's smaller ones. The girl's hand hovering near Rex's flank without touching, instinct telling her to respect the dog's focus. The base's perimeter fence receded behind them, its chain-link rattle fading into the low hum of idling generators and the distant call of reveille from the barracks. Kane's radio crackled once, Harlan's voice threading through the static. "Kane, report position. Drill's not over." He thumbed the PTT but held off responding, eyes on Rex's taut line of body, the subtle flare of nostrils passing the air's layered scents, pavement oil, pine resin from the tree line, and the faint, acrid trace of canine distress that had hooked the dog's attention. Emily trotted alongside, her breaths coming in short bursts, the hem of her school skirt brushing dew-wet grass. "He was right there by the playground fence," she said, voice steadying as the motion grounded her. This man in a white van leaned out, whistled like he was calling a stray. Buddy ran up. "He's friendly, you know." But then they grabbed him and drove off laughing. Her words hung in the mist, simple and unadorned, cutting through Kane's disciplined filter. In 15 years of ops, he'd tracked insurgents through wadis and IED-laced streets, but this was different. No ROE to navigate, no after-action reports to justify the detour. Just a child's trust and a dog's unerring nose, pulling him from the chain of command's rigid grid. Rex veered left at the road's fork, toward the shadowed underpass where the base's service route dipped under a rail line. The air grew cooler here, heavy with the metallic tang of rusting tracks and the faint brine from Puget Sound, a mile off. Kane scanned the surroundings. Tire marks veering sharply, a discarded fast food wrapper fluttering against a concrete barrier. No cameras in this sector. Budget cuts had prioritized the main gates, but the procedural part of his mind catalogued it all, building a mental sitrep. "Easy, Rex," he murmured as the dog paused, circling a patch of disturbed earth where paw prints mingled with boot scuffs. The mutt's scent cone was broadening, Rex's training overlaying it like a grid. "Follow the primary trail, alert on divergence." The radio buzzed again, sharper this time. "Chief Kane, this is Lieutenant Harlan. You're off-grid. Return to formation immediately." Kane's jaw tightened under the stubble, the weight of his tack vest suddenly heavier. Harlan was by the book, a career officer who'd risen through logistics before K9 oversight, his world one of checklists and compliance logs. Defying him wasn't just personal. It rippled up the chain, to the XO, then command staff potentially marking Kane's file with a counseling chit, or worse, a formal inquiry. But as Rex pressed on, whining low with intent, Kane felt the moral tether snap taut. Duty to the mission was ironclad, but this, leaving a dependent's plea unanswered, felt like abandoning post, the kind of quiet failure that eroded a man's core over deployments. They emerged from the underpass into a strip of commercial sprawl just off base. A cluster of auto shops and storage units, their corrugated metal sides beaded with condensation. Dawn's light filtered through the overcast, turning the scene to muted grays. Headlights of early commuters slicing the fog, the distant rumble of a freight train. Emily pointed ahead. That's the way they went, toward the highway on-ramp. Rex locked onto a fresh vector, leading them past a chain of parked semis, his harness straps creaking with each purposeful bound. Kane kept pace, one hand on his sidearm's holster out of habit, though this wasn't a hot zone. The bond with Rex was his anchor. The dog didn't question orders, didn't weigh consequences. He tracked truth, pure and unyielding, a loyalty that mirrored the unspoken pacts Kane had forged with teammates in the suck of forgotten outposts. A quarter-mile in, Rex stiffened, hackles rising as he nosed a chain-link gate half ajar, leading to a fenced lot behind a tire warehouse. The white van sat there, engine cold, its blue stripe faded under a layer of road grime. No movement inside, but the side door hung slightly open, a shadow shifting within. Kane halted, signaling Emily back with a raised palm, professional instinct kicking in, turning civilian concern into operational caution. "Stay here," he told her, voice low and even. She nodded, eyes wide but trusting, clutching the fence as if it were a lifeline. Rex advanced on command, a soft sits keeping him controlled as he sniffed the vehicle's undercarriage. A muffled yelp echoed from within. Buddy, the mutt, his form huddled in the cargo bay amid coiled ropes and tool crates. Kane's pulse steadied. Extraction was straightforward if clean, but the two figures emerging from the warehouse shadows complicated it. Civilian workers by their coveralls, but their postures screamed evasion. One clutching a lead, the other scanning the lot with feigned nonchalance. "Hey, you can't be back here," the taller one called, voice edged with bluff. "Private property." Kane stood his ground, radio now silent in his ear. Harlan likely escalating to base security. Naval special warfare. That van match a description from a base dependent? His tone was neutral, procedural, but the weight of his insignia and Rex's poised stance spoke volumes. The men exchanged glances, the shorter one fumbling for words. "Just picking up a stray. Animal control gig. Unofficial." Lies layered thin, but Kane's focus sharpened on the dog inside, Buddy's eyes reflecting the growing light, tail thumping weakly against the floor. Before Kane could press, the radio erupted. "All units! This is base command. Unauthorized pursuit reported. Kane, stand down and await MP escort." The words landed like a reprimand in formation, the institutional machine grinding to life. Emily's gasp carried from the fence, her small frame tensing as sirens wailed faintly in the distance. MPs en route, protocol enforcing its boundaries. Rex whined, sensing the shift. His nose still locked on the van's interior. Kane's hand rested on the dog's head, a brief anchor of fur under palm, the warmth a reminder of the loyalties that orders couldn't override. The taller worker stepped forward, lead in hand. "Look, mister, we didn't mean no harm. Kid's dog wandered. We'll return it." But Kane saw the hesitation, the moral slip in their averted eyes. A petty opportunism clashing with the base's code of care for its own. As the first patrol lights crested the rise, Kane made his call, unclipped Rex's lead fully, letting the dog circle the van in a protective arc. "Open it," he said, voice carrying the quiet authority of a man who'd stared down worse than this. The workers complied, Buddy scrambling out into the morning chill, shaking off the ordeal with a series of grateful whines. Emily rushed forward then, wrapping her arms around the mutt, tears silent now in the relief of reunion. Kane watched, the scene etching into him. The raw edge of compassion amid the fog-shrouded lot, the cost of that choice already mounting in the approaching sirens. Harlan's voice crackled once more, laced with formality. "Chief, you've breached protocol. Report to the ready room on return." The reckoning was here, public in its inevitability, the base's eyes turning toward this off-script pursuit. But as Rex returned to heel, flank-brushing Kane's leg in silent solidarity, the handler felt no regret, only the steady pulse of conscience, a force as unyielding as the dog's track through the dawn. The patrol lights painted the warehouse lot in staccato blues and reds, cutting through the thinning fog like search beams on a night op. Master Chief Kane stood motionless as the MP Humvee rolled to a halt, its tires grinding over loose gravel, the diesel rumble fading to a low idle. Two military police officers dismounted, boots hitting the ground with synchronized thuds, their BDU trousers whispering against the vehicle's frame. The taller one, a staff sergeant with a fresh buzz cut, and the insignia of the 42nd MP Battalion, approached first, hand resting casually on his duty belt. "Chief Kane, Lieutenant Harlan flagged your transponder off sector. What's the sit-rep here?" Kane met the man's gaze evenly, Rex at his heel, the dog's flanks rising and falling in calm rhythm, ears attuned to the new arrivals. Emily clung to Buddy a few paces back, the mutt's wet nose bumping her knee, his tail sweeping arcs in the dirt. The workers hovered by the van, coveralls smudged with grease. Their earlier bluster evaporated under the weight of official scrutiny. "Routine pursuit," Kane replied, voice level, pulling his ID from a vest pocket and extending it. Base dependent reported a theft. K9 tracked the vehicle. Animal recovered. No further threat. The sergeant nodded, jotting notes on a battered notepad, the pen's scratch audible in the morning hush. His partner circled the van, flashlight beam dancing over the open door and scattered tools inside. Wrenches, extension cords. Nothing incriminating on the surface, but the air held the faint, sour edge of confinement, like a kennel left too long. "We'll need statements from all parties," the second MP said, turning to the workers. "You two, IDs and explanation. Picking up strays off base without clearance. That's a grey area, at best." The taller worker shifted, rubbing his neck. "Like we said, thought it was a loose dog, no harm meant." But his eyes darted to Kane, the handler's presence a silent indictment. Emily stepped forward unbidden, her small hand firm on Buddy's collar. "They took him. I saw the van from our yard." The sergeant knelt to her level, his uniform's creases folding neatly, voice softening just a notch, the procedural deference to a dependent. "We'll sort it, miss. You and your dog head back with the first unit. Safe now." As she nodded, relief etching lines on her young face, Kane felt the ripple. This wasn't contained to the lot. Word would spread through the base's family networks, from the schoolyard to the PX lines, turning a private detour into communal knowledge. The MPs escorted the workers to their vehicle for transport to the station, the van's keys handed over with a clink of metal on palm. Kane clipped Rex's lead, the dog's tongue lolling briefly in the cooling air, a subtle release after the track. "Good work," Kane murmured, scratching behind the shepherd's ear, the fur warm and coarse under his fingers. Rex leaned into it, a single huff of acknowledgement, their bond a quiet constant amid the unfolding scrutiny. The radio on Kane's shoulder crackled again, Harlan's tone clipped through the static. "Kane, MPs have you. Ready room on return. Full debrief." No anger, just the flat efficiency of command, but Kane knew the undercurrent. The breach logged, the chain engaged. By the time they cleared the lot, the sun had breached the overcast, warming the asphalt and drawing steam from puddles left by the night's mist. The Humvee ferried Emily and Buddy back to the family quarters first, the girl waving from the window, her ponytail bouncing as they pulled away. Kane rode in silence with the MPs. Rex curled at his feet, the vehicle's sway sinking with the base's distant hum, rotor blades chopping air from the airfield. The metallic clang of a forklift in the motor pool. The sergeant glanced over. "Heard about your unit's drills. K9 integration's tight work. But off-protocol chase? Command's gonna want details." Kane nodded once, staring at the passing fence line, the wire glinting like drawn blades. 15 years in, he'd navigated worse. Boardings in contested waters, extractions under fire. But this was internal, the kind of friction that tested not just skill, but the soul's alignment with the oath. Back at the base, the parade grounds had emptied. Trainees dispersed to after-action reviews, their boot prints fading under the emerging heat. Kane reported to the ready room, a squat concrete bunker off the K9 kennels. Its walls lined with gear lockers and faded morale posters. Mission first, people always. Lieutenant Harlan waited inside, pacing the scuffed linoleum, his folder of drill logs open on the metal table. The air smelled of stale coffee and oiled leather, the room's single window framing the exercise yard where handlers now walked their dogs on cool-down leashes. Rex settled by the door, nose twitching at the familiar scents, other canines, canvas tarps, the faint ozone of electronics. "Chief," Harlan began, stopping mid-stride, his bars catching the fluorescent glare. "You abandoned your post. Drills don't pause for civilian matters. Base security has protocols for that." Kane stood at ease, hands clasped behind his back, the tack vest shed, but its discipline lingering in his posture. "Understood, sir. But the dependent was immediate. Girl's father deployed, no other adults on scene. Rex confirmed the track. Recovery was clean." Harlan's eyes narrowed, flipping through papers. "And the MPs? They're filing it as unauthorized. Word's already hitting the S3 shop. If this escalates to the CO, it's your career on the line, not just a slap on the wrist." The door swung open then, admitting the unit's senior handler, Petty Officer First Class Lena Torres, her Malinois partner absent, but the leash coiled at her hip. She'd been on the drill perimeter, one of the witnesses to Kane's veer from formation. "Lieutenant," she said, saluting sharply. "Heard the chatter. Chief did right. Girl was hysterical at the fence. Whole platoon saw it." Harlan exhaled, rubbing his temple, the room's tension thickening like pre-mission brief humidity. Outside, a handler's whistle pierced the air, dogs responding in a chorus of controlled barks, the base's order reasserting itself even as Kane's choice cracked its surface. As the debrief dragged, timelines recounted, logs cross-checked, the news filtered in via the base's informal net. A quick call from family services confirmed Emily safe. Buddy checked by the vet for minor stress. No charges yet on the workers, but questions about their gig. Trainees murmured in the mess hall lines, the story evolving from whisper to anecdote. The SEAL handler who ditched drill for a kid's dog. Rex leading like a shadow through the fog. Kane felt the eyes on him as he exited the ready room, passing the kennels where Rex's enclosure waited, the dog's silhouette pacing the chain link, sensing his handler's return. Harlan followed him out, voice lowering. "You're solid, Kane, but this tests the system. CO's calling a review board by 1400, witnesses' statements, the works." Kane nodded. Gripping Rex's lead for the walkback, the dog's stride sinking effortlessly with his own. The sun climbed higher, baking the gravel paths, the air alive with the scent of heated pine and distant salt water. In the rigid lattice of ranks, this was the public turn. Not a firefight, but a tribunal of conscience where one man's defiance could echo through the institution, forcing it to weigh loyalty against the letter of the law. As they moved toward the training fields, Kane's hand brushed Rex's head once more, the warmth a tether to the truth beneath the orders, the unyielding pull of doing right, even as the reckoning bore down. "Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach." The fluorescent lights of the command briefing room buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow on the polished oak table where folders lay in precise stacks. Master Chief Elias Kane sat ramrod straight in the folding chair, his dress blues pressed to a knife edge, the ribbons on his chest catching faint reflections from the projector screen at the room's far end. Rex waited outside in the handler's lounge, kennelled temporarily with the other unit dogs, his absence a subtle void, like a missing piece of gear before a drop. It was 1400 hours sharp, the base clock ticking with military punctuality, as the review board convened, Lieutenant Harlan at the head, flanked by the executive officer, Commander Reyes. A wiry veteran with salt and pepper hair and eyes that had scanned more after-action reports than Kane cared to count. 2 JAG reps from the legal detachment rounded out the panel, notepads open, pens poised over lined paper. "Chief Kane," Reyes began, his voice carrying the gravel of years in forward areas, folding his hands on the table. "We've reviewed the MP's initial report and Lieutenant Harlan's drill log. Your actions this morning deviated from standard operating procedure. Care to walk us through it?" The room smelled of fresh ink and institutional coffee, the kind brewed strong in the S3 office to cut through afternoon lulls. Kane met the commander's gaze without flinching, recounting the sequence methodically. The formations snapped to attention, Rex's alert at the fence line, Emily's plea piercing the exercise rhythm. He described the track, Rex's nose to the dew-slick road, the fog's chill seeping through tack gear. As if briefing a post-mission AAR, no embellishment, just facts layered like intel overlays. Harlan interjected once, his folder open to a time-stamped grid. "The drill was active, sir. K9 teams were committed to simulated evasion protocols. Chief's transponder showed him veering 800 meters off-sector without clearance." Reyes nodded, jotting a note, the pen's click echoing in the quiet. Outside the reinforced windows, the base stirred with mid-afternoon routine, a platoon jogging in cadence, boots thumping gravel in unison, the distant whine of a helo spooling up for a familiarization flight. Kane felt the weight of it all, the chain of command's invisible lattice, where one unchecked step could snag an entire career. 15 years of quals, deployments, and quiet commendations hung in the balance, not from enemy fire, but from this internal audit of intent. The JAG officer, a lieutenant commander with wire-rimmed glasses, leaned forward, and the dependent, Emily Hargrove, father's a Marine, E6, currently on rotation in the Gulf. No other adults present? Kane confirmed it, voice steady. "Affirmative. She was alone at the fence, sir. The van's occupants were civilians, off-base workers. Recovery was non-violent. MPs handled escalation. The board absorbed it, the air thickening with unspoken calculations. Protocol versus exigency, the oath's broad stroke against SOP's fine print. Reyes steepled his fingers. Appreciate the initiative, Chief, but we can't have handlers going rogue on a whim. Base Security's line is there for a reason. Freeze you for the mission. As the questioning looped, timelines cross-checked. Witness statements from Torres and the trainees pulled in via intercom. The story seeped beyond the room's sealed doors. In the canine kennels, handlers murmured during shift change. Lena Torres walking her Malinois past the enclosures, her voice low to a junior petty officer. Kane didn't chase glory, he chased right. Girl's dad hears this, he'll owe the chief. Word threaded through the motor pool, where mechanics paused mid-wrench, radios tuned to the base net, carrying snippets of the van incident. By evening, it reached the family quarters. Emily's mother, back from her shift at the clinic, hugging her daughter tighter, Buddy's tags jingling on his new collar. That seal and his dog, they brought him home before I even knew he was gone. The base's grapevine, vaster than any official memo, turned Kane's detour into legend, a quiet defiance that humanized the ranks. The board recessed at 1600, Reyes dismissing Kane with a curt, "Stand by for findings." He exited into the corridor, the cool blast of AC hitting his face like a post-mission rinse, boots echoing on the tile. Rex greeted him at the lounge door, rising from his pad with a soft whine. Tail sweeping once in restrained welcome. Kane knelt, gloved hand, still in blues, no time to change, running along the dog's jawline, feeling the steady pulse beneath the fur. "Held the line, boy," he said. The words a private debrief. The lounge hummed with low chatter, other handlers reviewing gear, leashes coiled neatly on hooks, the faint scent of kibble and liniment hanging in the air. Torres approached, nodding approval. "Board's fair, but you're stirring the pot. CO might dock liberty, but the families, they're talking reform, better coordination for dependent alerts." Dusk settled over the base as Kane walked Rex through the cooling fields, the grass whispering under their steps, sodium lamps flickering to life along the paths. The review's shadow lingered, but so did the echoes. A trainee in the mess line saluting him a beat longer than regulation, a quick nod from the MP sergeant who'd responded to the lot. Harlan caught him near the barracks, falling in step briefly, his earlier edge softened by the day's grind. "You're not wrong, Chief, but pushing boundaries. It forces us to look at the gaps. I'll back your sit-rep in the final log." No apology, just the pragmatic truce of shared service, the lieutenant's bars glinting in the fading light. By nightfall, the incident rippled upward. Commander Reyes placed a call to the base chaplain, not for counsel, but to gauge the morale pulse among families. Stories of the K9 rescue already boosting trust in the units. In the S3 shop, a junior staffer drafted a memo. Propose cross-training for K9 teams on rapid response protocols for on-base dependents, citing Kane's action as a catalyst. It wasn't fanfare. Military reform moved in memos and standing orders, quiet evolutions born from friction points like this. Kane bedded Rex down in the kennel, the dog's eyes following him to the gate, a final thump of tail against the straw. The handler retired to his quarters, the day's tension uncoiling in the bunk's familiar creak, the distant hum of the flight line lulling him towards sleep. Morning brought the board's verdict. Formal reprimand in Kane's file, 30 days restricted duty. No field exercises, just kennel oversight and admin. But attached was a commendation rider. Exemplary initiative in support of base community welfare. Reyes pulled him aside post-brief, voice low in the command hallway. "You're a symbol now, Chief. Use it. Mentor the juniors on when to bend without breaking." Kane saluted, the motion crisp, feeling the shift, his choice not buried in paperwork but elevated, a lesson etched into the unit's ethos. As he clipped Rex's lead for a routine walk, the base awoke around them, Reveille's bugle cutting the air, boots forming ranks in the distance. The reckoning had passed, but its legacy lingered, a moral current strengthening the chain, one handler's conscience at a time. The weeks following the review board blurred into a rhythm of restricted duty, the kind that tested a handler's patience more than any field op. Master Chief Elias Kane traded the grit of training fields for the ordered quiet of the K9 Administrative Annex, a low-slung building tucked behind the kennels where the air carried the perpetual mix of disinfectant and damp fur. Mornings began with inventory checks, harnesses uncoiled on metal racks, leashes sorted by length, Rex's enclosure at the end of the row, the dog's routine unperturbed as he paced the chain link with measured steps. Kane's reprimand hung in his file like a shadow, 30 days of no deployments, no quals. But the commendation rider softened its edges, a procedural nod to the intent behind the breach. He spent the hours mentoring juniors, his voice steady as he walked them through scent theory in the Annex's briefing room, whiteboards marked with diagrams of wind vectors and trail dilution. "A dog's nose doesn't question the grid," he'd say, gloved hand gesturing to a sketch of the base perimeter. "It follows the truth, but you decide when to release the lead." Petty Officer Torres joined sessions when her schedule allowed. A Malinois, Jax, demonstrating quartering patterns on the indoor mats, the click of nails on vinyl punctuating the explanations. The juniors listened, not with the rote nods of drill, but with the subtle leans forward of those absorbing more than tactics, lessons in the moral pauses between commands. Word of the incident had woven into the base's fabric, subtle as thread in a uniform seam. In the family readiness group meetings at the community center, Emily's mother shared the story during coffee hours, her voice carrying over the clink of mugs and the hum of vending machines. That chief and his dog, they didn't wait for the forms. Buddy's sleeping at the foot of her bed now, no more wandering. Dependents nodded, the tale bridging the gap between the razor-wire world of ops and the picket-fenced quarters, fostering a quiet trust. Even the workers from the warehouse faced light charges, misdemeanor theft, community service. But the base command issued a standing advisory, enhanced patrols near family housing with K9 units looped into the alert chain for rapid response. Kane felt the shifts in small ways. During a routine walk with Rex along the perimeter path, the gravel crunching under their boots, a group of trainees from the drill that morning saluted as they passed, holds lingering a fraction longer than regulation. One, a young seaman with fresh ink on his forearm, a dog's paw print, muttered, "Heard about the track, Chief. Solid work." Kane nodded once, no fanfare, but the exchange etched deeper than any medal. Rex sensed it too, his stride loosening as they crested the rise overlooking the sound, the water's surface rippling under a slate-grey sky, gulls wheeling with sharp cries. By the end of the restriction, Commander Reyes summoned him to the S3 office, the room's walls lined with ops maps pinned under glass, the scent of dry erase markers lingering from morning briefs. "Files clean now, Kane," Reyes said, sliding a folder across the desk, its edges crisp. "Reprimand stands as a caution, but the commendation's public, unit newsletter, even a mention in the command brief." He paused, eyes appraising. "Your call sparked something. We're piloting a new protocol. K9 quick response for dependent welfare incidents. Handlers get cross-training with MPs, direct lines to family services. No more silos." Kane absorbed it, the words landing like a cleared LZ. Reform born not from fanfare, but from the friction of one choice tested against the system. Harlan was there too, leaning against the doorframe, his earlier formality eased into professional respect. "I logged the support, Chief. Pushed for the pilot myself. Saw the gap after your detour." No handshake, just a nod. the unspoken pact of the chain. Critique sharpened the whole, not just the individual. As Kane exited, the bass thrummed with end-of-day cadence, platoons dismissing from PT, the low rumble of transports idling in the motor pool, sodium lights flickering on against the encroaching dusk. That evening, Kane clipped Rex's lead for an extended circuit, the dog's harness adjusted with familiar snaps, their path winding past the family quarters, where lights glowed in windows like distant signal fires. Emily spotted them from her yard, Buddy bounding to the fence with joyful barks, the mutt's scruffy coat catching the lamplight. She waved, ponytail swinging, her mother calling a thank you from the porch, voice carrying on the cooling breeze. Kane raised a hand in return, brief and measured. Rex pausing to huff at the fence, noses touching through the wire in a momentary bridge of sense, loyalty's quiet language. Back at the kennels, as Kane secured the enclosure, the weight of the days settled. The reprimand had cost him field time, a dent in the rhythm of quals and briefs, but the legacy unfolded broader. Juniors now quizzed him on ethical sims during downtime, scenarios blending SOP with the human variables of base life. Torres mentioned it over chow one night. Forks scraping trays in the enlisted mess, the air thick with steam from the serving line. You're mentoring without saying it, Chief. They see the cost, the restricted duty, the board, and still ask how you'd run the track again. He shrugged, but the truth anchored him. Integrity's price was paid in silence, its return in the strengthened line. The pilot protocol rolled out formally at month's end. A memo circulated through the units, its language procedural yet laced with the incident's echo. Kane's name cited in the rationale, not as hero, but as catalyst. He resumed full duties the next dawn, formation crisp under the rising sun, Rex at heel as the whistle barked the start of drills. The base felt subtly altered, its order more resilient, the moral fault lines mapped and reinforced. Kane's defiance had rippled outward, transforming not just one handler's path, but the institution's quiet evolution, proof that conscience, tethered to loyalty, could bend the rigid without breaking it. In the quiet breath before the next command, Kane scratched Rex's ear, the dog's eyes meeting his with unwavering trust. The sun crested the horizon, gilding the parade grounds as the team moved forward as one. Epilogue. In the end, it was the dog's unerring track that reminded them all, true duty follows the scent of what's right, leaving a legacy etched in every step. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of Little Girl Screamed, "They took my dog." The SEALs K9 tracked the van before sunrise. See you in the next one.